The Galactic Federation was a sprawling tapestry of civilizations, each thread representing a species that had carved its place among the stars. For centuries, the Federation had governed the galaxy, its members bound by treaties, trade agreements, and a shared sense of superiority. Humanity, however, was an anomaly. Newcomers to the galactic stage, they were viewed as fragile, primitive, and unworthy of respect. The older species saw them as little more than curiosities, their potential dismissed outright. This arrogance would prove to be their undoing. It began with a single act of cruelty. A human diplomat, sent to negotiate trade rights with the Zarathians, was captured on trumped-up charges. The Zarathians, a warlike species known for their brutality, accused the diplomat of violating an obscure law, a law so vague that it could be twisted to suit their purposes. The Galactic Federation, ever bureaucratic and indifferent, refused to intervene. They saw no value in risking their delicate balance of power for the sake of one human. The Zarathians, emboldened by this lack of action, decided to make an example of the diplomat. The execution was broadcast across the galaxy, a spectacle designed to showcase the Zarathians' dominance. The diplomat stood tall, defiant even in the face of death, as the Zarathian executioner raised their weapon. The galaxy watched in silence as the life of a single human was extinguished. To the Federation, it was a minor event, a footnote in the grand scheme of things. To humanity, it was an unforgivable act of violence, a declaration of war. The news spread like wildfire across Earth and its colonies. Outrage erupted in every corner of human space. Protests filled the streets, and leaders were inundated with demand for justice. Humanity had always been a species of resilience and ingenuity, but now, something darker stirred within them. The execution was not just an attack on one individual. It was an attack on all humanity, and humanity would not let it stand. In the halls of power, leaders convened in emergency sessions. The mood was grim, but there was no hesitation, no debate. The decision was unanimous. The Zarathians would pay for their crime, but humanity would not act rashly. They would not send a small fleet or issue empty threats. No, they would respond with such overwhelming force that the galaxy would never forget the consequences of harming a human. Behind the scenes, humanity had been preparing for this moment. While the galaxy saw them as weak, humanity had been quietly building, innovating, and perfecting their technology. They had learned from the older species, adapting their advancements and surpassing them in ways no one had anticipated. Hidden in the depths of space, far from prying eyes, humanity had constructed a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 500,000 Dreadnoughts, each a marvel of engineering and firepower, waited in the shadows, ready to be unleashed. The leaders of humanity issued a statement, broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. "You executed one of us." It began, the words cold and unyielding. "Now you will face the consequences. We are coming." The message was simple, but its implications were clear. The galaxy, so accustomed to dismissing humanity, now felt a flicker of unease. The Zarathians, once so confident in their power, began to feel the first stirrings of fear. As humanity's fleet prepared to depart, a single thought echoed to the minds of every human. This was not just about revenge. It was about sending a message that would resonate across the stars. Humanity was no longer the weak, insignificant species the galaxy had dismissed. They were a force to be reckoned with, a species that would not be cowed by cruelty or indifference. The execution of one human had sparked a fire, and that fire would consume everything in its path. The galaxy would learn, in the most brutal way possible, that humanity does not forget, and humanity does not forgive. The galaxy had always underestimated humanity. They saw a young species, barely out of its cradle, and assumed it posed no threat. What they failed to understand was humanity's unique ability to adapt, innovate, and endure. While the Galactic Federation dismissed them as irrelevant, humanity had been working tirelessly in the shadows, preparing for the day they would no longer be ignored. That day had come. The execution of the human diplomat was a spark, but the fire had been building for decades. Humanity had watched the galaxy's indifference, its arrogance, and its willingness to sacrifice the weak for the sake of convenience. They had seen how the Federation turned a blind eye to injustice, how it allowed species like the Zorathians to act with impunity, and they had decided, long before the diplomat's death, that they would never be victims. They would be the ones to rewrite the rules. The mobilization began immediately. Across Earth and its colonies, shipyards that had lain dormant sprang to life. Factories that had once produced civilian goods were repurposed for war. Every resource, every ounce of ingenuity, was poured into a single goal: the construction of a fleet that would dwarf anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity's leaders had made a promise, and they intended to keep it. The Dreadnoughts were the pinnacle of human engineering. Each one was a masterpiece of design, a fusion of cutting-edge technology and raw firepower. Their hulls were reinforced with self-repairing nanomaterials, capable of withstanding even the most devastating attacks. Their weapon systems were powered by AI-driven targeting algorithms, ensuring pinpoint accuracy, and their engines, a marvel of efficiency, allowed them to traverse vast distances in record time. These were not just ships, they were instruments of vengeance. The scale of the fleet was staggering. 500,000 dreadnoughts, each one a city in the void, bristling with weapons and armor to the teeth. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. The Federation's fleets, once considered the pinnacle of military might, paled in comparison. Humanity had not just caught up to the older species, they had surpassed them in every way. But it wasn't just the technology that made humanity dangerous. It was their mindset. While the Federation relied on tradition and hierarchy, humanity embraced innovation and adaptability. They had no qualms about breaking the rules, about doing whatever it took to achieve their goals. They had studied the galaxy's weaknesses, its blind spots, and they had exploited them to the fullest. The Dreadnoughts were not just a display of power, they were a statement. Humanity was no longer playing by the galaxy's rules. They were writing their own. As the fleet neared completion, humanity's leaders sent a message to the galaxy. It was short, direct, and utterly devoid of mercy. "You executed one of us," it began. "Now you will face the consequences. We are coming." The message was broadcast on every frequency, in every language, ensuring that no one could claim ignorance. The galaxy, so accustomed to dismissing humanity, now felt a chill run down its collective spine. The Zorathians, once so confident in their power, began to feel the first stirrings of fear. They had expected humanity to cower, to beg for mercy, or perhaps to send a token force as a show of defiance. They had not expected this. 500,000 dreadnoughts, each one a testament to humanity's resolve, were now on their way to Zorathian space. The Zorathians scrambled to prepare, but deep down, they knew it was already too late. The Federation, too, was shaken. They had always seen humanity as a minor player, a species to be tolerated but never respected. Now, they were forced to confront the reality that they had underestimated humanity in the worst possible way. Some called for diplomacy, for an attempt to de-escalate the situation. Others argued that humanity needed to be stopped before they became a threat to the entire galaxy. But no one had a plan, no one had a solution. Humanity had caught them completely off guard. As the dreadnoughts moved into position, the galaxy held its breath. This was not just a battle, it was a turning point. Humanity had been pushed too far, and now they were pushing back. The execution of one human had set this chain of events in motion, but the consequences would be felt by every species in the galaxy. The Zorathians had made a fatal mistake, and now they would pay the price. Humanity was coming, and they were bringing justice with them. The arrival of humanity's fleet was not subtle. It was not a quiet infiltration or a cautious probe. It was an avalanche, a tidal wave of steel and fire that descended upon Zorathian space with terrifying precision. The dreadnoughts emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their numbers so vast that they blotted out the stars. The Zorathians, for all their bravado, were unprepared for the sheer scale of the force arrayed against them. Their sensors lit up with warnings, their commanders scrambled to respond. But deep down, they knew it was already too late. The first strike was surgical. Humanity's dreadnoughts targeted the Zorathian fleet with devastating efficiency. Their AI-driven targeting systems locked onto enemy ships with unerring accuracy, their weapons firing in perfect unison. The Zorathian vessels, once considered formidable, were reduced to scrap in moments. Their shields buckled under the onslaught, their hulls torn apart by concentrated fire. The Dreadnoughts moved with a cold, mechanical precision, their actions devoid of hesitation or mercy. This was not a battle. It was an execution. The Zorathians fought back, of course. They launched every weapon at their disposal, from plasma cannons to ion disruptors, but it was like throwing pebbles at a mountain. The Dreadnought self-repairing hulls absorbed the damage, their systems adapting to counter every attack. The Zorathians' efforts were futile, their defiance only delayed the inevitable. Humanity's fleet advanced relentlessly, carving a path to the Zorathian defenses with terrifying ease. As the battle raged, the Dreadnoughts began targeting the Zorathians' infrastructure. Orbital stations, shipyards, and planetary defenses were obliterated in a series of coordinated strikes. The Zorathians had built their empire on conquest and fear, but now their empire was crumbling around them. Their worlds, once proud and unassailable, were now vulnerable. The Dreadnoughts' weapons rained down destruction, reducing cities to ash and turning fortresses into rubble. The Zorathians had made the mistake of provoking humanity, and now they were paying the price. The Zorathian leadership, desperate and panicked, attempted to negotiate. They sent out pleas for mercy, offering concessions and apologies, but humanity was not interested. The time for diplomacy had passed. The execution of the human diplomat had been a deliberate act of cruelty, a message to the galaxy that humanity was weak. Now, humanity was sending a message of their own. The Dreadnoughts continued their advance, their weapons silent, but for the occasional burst of fire to eliminate any remaining resistance. The Zorathians' fate was sealed. The final blow came when the Dreadnoughts reached the Zorathian homeworld. The planet, once a symbol of their power, was now a symbol of their downfall. The Dreadnoughts surrounded it, their weapons trained on its surface. The Zorathians, realizing the futility of further resistance, surrendered unconditionally. But humanity was not interested in surrender. They had come for justice, and justice they would deliver. The Dreadnoughts unleashed their full firepower on the Zorathian homeworld. Their weapons tore through the atmosphere, reducing cities to molten slag and turning landscapes into barren wastelands. The Zorathians, who had once reveled in their dominance, now cowered in fear as their world was consumed by fire. The destruction was not indiscriminate. It was precise, calculated, and utterly merciless. Humanity had promised consequences, and they had delivered. As the last of the Zorathian defenses fell silent, the Dreadnoughts withdrew. Their mission was complete. The Zorathians, one of the powerful and feared species, were now a broken remnant of their former selves. Their fleet was destroyed, their infrastructure in ruins, and their homeworld a smoldering wreck. The galaxy watched in stunned silence, realizing too late that humanity was not a species to be trifled with. The battle had been swift, brutal, and decisive. Humanity had not just defeated the Zorathians, they had annihilated them. The Dreadnoughts, symbols of humanity's resolve, had proven their worth. The galaxy, so accustomed to dismissing humanity, now saw them in a new light. They were no longer the weak, insignificant species they had once been. They were a force to be reckoned with, a species that would not be cowed by cruelty or indifference. The Zorathians had made a fatal mistake, and now they had paid the price. But this was not just about them. This was a message to the entire galaxy. Humanity had shown what they were capable of, and they had made it clear that they would not tolerate injustice. The execution of one human had sparked a fire, and that fire had consumed the Zorathians. The galaxy would not soon forget the lesson they had been taught. Humanity does not forget, and humanity does not forgive. The aftermath of humanity's retribution rippled across the galaxy like a shockwave. The Zorathians, once a dominant and feared species, were reduced to a shadow of their former selves. Their homeworld smoldered, their fleet was obliterated, and their influence shattered. But the impact of humanity's actions extended far beyond the Zorathians. The Galactic Federation, which had long dismissed humanity as insignificant, now faced a reckoning of its own. The balance of power had shifted, and the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity's leaders wasted no time in addressing the Federation. A single transmission, broadcast on every frequency and in every language, reached every corner of the galaxy. It was not a plea for recognition or a request for a seat at the table. It was a declaration, cold and unyielding. "You allowed this to happen," the message began. "You stood by while one of ours was executed, and you did nothing. That ends today. Humanity will no longer be ignored. We will no longer be victims. From this moment forward, we will be the architects of our own destiny." The Federation, shaken and humbled, had no choice but to listen. The Dreadnoughts, still lingering in Zorathian space, were a stark reminder of humanity's newfound power. The older species, so accustomed to their dominance, now found themselves on the defensive. Some called for caution, urging the Federation to avoid provoking humanity further. Others, more pragmatic, recognized the need to adapt to new reality. Humanity was no longer a minor player in the galactic arena. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the Federation had no choice but to acknowledge that fact. Negotiations began almost immediately. Humanity demanded a permanent seat on the Federation's ruling council, as well as guarantees that their people would never again be subjected to such injustice. The Federation, still reeling from the demonstration of humanity's might, had little room to argue. Reluctantly, they agreed to humanity's terms. For the first time in its history, the Galactic Federation was forced to confront its own complacency. The older species, so confident in their superiority, now had to reckon with the fact that they were no longer the galaxy's sole arbiters of power. But humanity's victory was not without its costs. The destruction of the Zorathians, while justified in the eyes of many, left a bitter taste in the mouths of some. There were those who questioned whether humanity had gone too far, whether the price of justice had been too high. These voices, however, were few and far between. For most, the message was clear. Humanity would not be trifled with. The execution of one human had sparked a fire, and that fire had reshaped the galaxy. The Dreadnoughts, now symbols of humanity's resolve, returned to their hidden shipyards. Their mission complete, they stood as a silent reminder of what humanity was capable of. The galaxy, once so quick to dismiss them, now regarded them with a mixture of awe and fear. Humanity had proven that they were not just survivors, they were conquerors. They had taken the galaxy's indifference and turned it into a weapon, one that had brought even the mightiest species to their knees. In the years that followed, humanity's influence grew. They became a dominant force within the Federation, their voice carrying weight in every decision. The older species, once so dismissive, now sought their counsel and their alliance. Humanity's ingenuity and adaptability, once seen as weaknesses, were now recognized as strengths. They had shown the galaxy that they were not just capable of surviving among the stars, they were capable of shaping them. But amidst the triumph, there was also reflection. Humanity's leaders knew that their actions had come at a cost. The destruction of the Zorathians, while necessary, was a reminder of the dangers of unchecked power. They vowed to use their newfound influence wisely to ensure that the galaxy would never again be ruled by fear and indifference. The Dreadnoughts, while a symbol of their strength, would also serve as a reminder of their responsibility. The galaxy had changed, and humanity had been the catalyst. They had shown that even the smallest spark could ignite a fire, and that fire could reshape the stars. The execution of one human had been the spark, but the flames it ignited would burn for generations. The galaxy would not soon forget the lesson it had been taught. Humanity does not forget, and humanity does not forgive. And now, the galaxy understood what that truly meant.